Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from New York, it's Wisdom of the Sages, your daily yoga podcast with your host Kaustubha today, and with special guest co-host Paramananda. Welcome, Paramananda.
Haribol, Haribol. Live from Hudson, New York.
Live from Hudson, yeah.
I thought you were going to go live from New York. It's Saturday Night Live.
I know. So Raghunath is on the road today. He's headed down to Miami, so he couldn't do the show, but we're happy to have Paramananda as a guest host today. And of course, we've got Mara here. Mara thought she had a day off, but no. We went out and found a guest host. We're not letting anyone off the hook. Good morning to you, Mara.
Good morning.
So let's see. First, why don't we just, I'm still not used to being the head host, so why don't we just check in with Mara and see if we got any announcements, anything important to say?
We have the Bhakti Recovery Group meeting at 3 p.m. today.
Okay, Bhakti Recovery at 3.
Yeah, and then tomorrow's our Q&A day, so if people have questions, they can write to us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com.
Okay, but you got to do it quick.
Yeah.
You got a question, get it in within the next couple of hours or so. Of course, we could always take them next week too. So send in your questions. We love the questions.
And then Sunday's
the day off. Yeah, okay. But I'm doing something on Sunday. You see, I have to take the day off because I'm doing this all day kind of Bhagavad Gita related thing with this kind of far out place called the One Spirit Seminary, which is in New York. Kind of a far out seminary but it's kind of like one of these, I don't know, interdenominational, multicultural kind of seminaries. So last year I did something with them, and then this year I'm going to do this Gita thing. It's online. It's available to people if you're interested in seeing. Maybe I'll post a link on my Facebook page, but also I think if you Google One Spirit Seminary, you can find the different things that they're offering, and or maybe One Spirit Seminary Kaustubha Das, you'll probably find it. So if you're interested, you could check that out. But I'll have to take the day off because I'm going all day, and Raghunath's doing a teacher training on that day. So we'll be off that day. And then we'll be back again on Monday, I think, as usual. All right? Okay, so let's go ahead and get right into it. You ready, Paramananda?
Are we going to do the mantras first? Or
that's
no?
right. You know what? Even before the mantras. What we've been doing lately is we like to have Raghunath share a little nugget of wisdom. And I know that in your yoga classes, you've been doing a lot of Mahabharata reading, and your yoga classes, you get a lot into the philosophy aspect, don't you?
We spend at least the first 15 minutes going over different stories and stories from my life, stories from the Mahabharata.
Yeah, of equal significance historically.
Not of equal significance, but pastimes.
Right.
But we're in the final chapter of the Mahabharata.
Okay.
Which, if you've ever read the Mahabharata, it's sort of like the Game of Thrones. Like, everybody dies. All of your favorite people, they just die one after the other.
Sad. Yeah.
But it ends so sweet. I can't wait to get to the actual ending. But we're up to the
Have you actually read through the whole thing with them, or you just kind of like
no
jumped to the final chapter?
Yeah, we just go over different things. But we're on the final chapter right now, where Krishna leaves the planet, And so Krishna was cursed. So Arjuna got sent to Dwarka by his brother to check up on Krishna. And then he found out that Krishna had left the planet, and then he came back. And so his brothers are all worried about him. And then Arjuna just kind of like
Because they
walks
hadn't
in.
seen him in a long time, right?
Hadn't seen him for
Where is he?
months. They hadn't seen him for months. Or what's going on with Krishna? What's going on with Arjuna? And so at that moment, when Yudhisthira was talking to all the brothers, Arjuna walked in.
Yeah.
And when he walked in, he was so completely dejected that he couldn't lift his head up to even look at Yudhisthira in the eyes.
Oh.
And usually it's said that Arjuna is he's very lustrous.
Mm-hmm.
Very spiritual people, even like all the old paintings, you see spiritual people, of every culture, they have like a halo around their head. Like,
yeah,
you can't see it with your eyes, but it's just like a spiritual effulgence that they had. And Arjuna had that spiritual effulgence, but when he walked in, he had no luster. And Yudhisthira was like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so dejected? Why have you lost your luster? And Yudhisthira was thinking Krishna might have left the planet, but it was so painful to him to even contemplate that. So just like out of hope against hope, he asked Arjuna all these other questions of what could cause dejection in your life, losing enthusiasm for your life, losing that kind of shine that, dharmic people will walk around in.
Yeah. Sometimes you can just see someone, they're obviously depressed. What's going on? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's things that will make people depressed. And what's really cool about these questions is, it really puts the responsibility of your own kind of like happiness, your own internal shine on the person. What most people will do is, or what a lot of people will do is, they'll blame their circumstances for their being unhappy. I have this rotten boss, and that's why I'm unhappy. I'm in this terrible relationship, and that's why I'm unhappy. Like every single thing around them, they'll blame their own unhappiness for. But they never kind of like look to their own, what am I doing wrong in my life? What am I doing wrong in my relationships that's causing me to be dejected? So all these questions that Yudhisthira asks Arjuna, they deal with that. Like, are you doing things wrong in your own life that may cause you to be unhappy? It's a really kind of cool little list. Do you want to go over the whole list, or should we just pick out some? Or
whatever you're inspired to do.
All right. So the very first question that Yudhisthira asks Arjuna is your health okay? Because even something as practical as health, that can really make a person, unhappy if they neglect their health. And that's a responsibility that's on each person. No one else is going to do that for you. You have to kind of take charge of your own health. And it's important even in the spiritual sense. The next question is interesting. Has someone fought with you, threatened you, or thought badly about you? And really, it's interesting because, for a yogi, because the way that we can hurt other people is not just through like punching them in the nose, like the old Lower East Side days. You had beef with somebody, you just went up to them and just punched them. But you can also really hurt somebody with words. Yeah. And you can even hurt somebody with your thoughts. I have a great, really long, kind of cool story about being hurt by your thoughts. But when I read this, after we went over it in class, I was driving, and there was somebody really slow in front of me, and I was like, God damn it, speed up, like you SOB. And then I checked myself, and I was thinking, like, even the thoughts that you put out in the world, they affect other people. So as yogis, we want to even be very careful about how we think about other people. I thought that was a very interesting question.
It is. Or have I behaved in such a way that people are saying bad things about me, and therefore I'm in anxiety or depressed or something?
Exactly. The next one is, did you break a promise? And we talked all about the value of vows and making promises. And like in Vedic culture, it was such a big deal that if you broke a promise or if you broke a vow, it would actually take away your shine. That was another question. Did you give charity when someone asked? The importance of charity. If you want to chime in on any of these.
No, please. This is great.
Did you not give protection to someone when they were helpless? And in class, we talked about people that needed protection, or even living entities that needed protection. And even we went over the importance of protecting animals, because who are more helpless than animals? And it's interesting too, because when you don't protect people that are helpless, there's a tendency for those people to be exploited. And so look what's happening to animals. I mean, it's practically like an animal genocide these days of people eating animals for food. Right. It was incredible too, because I Googled how many animals a day are killed for food.
Oh, I hate to even think about it.
It's insane. I forget the number. I think it was like 200. I think it's 200 billion animals every single day are killed in the world. I think in America, it's like 250 million every single day just in America.
It's hard to even, it's painful to even have to try to think about that.
So people that are helpless, they tend to get exploited. If people don't step up to the plate to really protect them,
right.
It's chaos. Then he talked about, have you mistreated a woman? Or, there's a whole thing about, respecting women that was in there. Have you knowingly committed something against the principles of Dharma, which we do all the time? Even Arjuna did that in the Bhagavad Gita. He asked Krishna, why do I do things even though I know it's the wrong thing to do? He talked all about like lust and material desires. And then the last one is, he asked about Krishna, but the second to last one, he said, have you made a mistake that you considered unpardonable? And this is really interesting. According to, in Vedic thought, in Sanskrit, there's no word for evil. Evil meaning like there's a person that's inherently bad and rotten. There's no word for that, because in Vedic thought, everybody's pure. Everybody's a pure spirit soul. You're like a shining jewel, but you're just covered with mud. And to the degree that you're covered with ignorance, to that degree, your jewel, like all your good qualities, they just get covered, and people end up doing terrible things to each other. So it's important to realize, as yogis, as bhaktas, as aspiring spiritualists, everybody's pure. Even that jerk that you hate, that lives down the street or lives in the next apartment or is doing things that you can't stand, they're like a shining jewel.
Underneath it all.
And it's important to remember, because it gives you a kind of like just a respect, for all other people, even if they. And I thought that was like such a good point of, that Yudhisthira brought up.
Well, it's interesting that, we all go through ups and downs emotionally, right? And we may feel depressed. And then just the way that Yudhisthira was looking at, why is Arjuna depressed? Did you not keep a promise? Did you not protect someone that you really should have? Did you not step up? Did you, I love that idea about taking one's, looking at one's own life and trying to understand why am I going through this, rather than, looking externally. And, we have this, Dr. Christopher shared in relation to what you shared. He said that, he's quoting some statistics here. He says that more than 200 million animals are killed for food around the world every day, just on land. And so that doesn't even include like in the water and so on. He says just on land, including wild caught and farmed fishes, we get a total closer to 3 billion animals killed daily. That comes out to 72 billion land animals, and over 1.2 trillion aquatic animals killed for food around the world every day. And then he goes, oh my God, it gets, it doesn't include so many other ways that animals are abused. So it's a fact, it's like, it's always the duty of those who have the ability to protect, to protect the vulnerable. And obviously these animals are vulnerable. And how could we imagine that we wouldn't be depressed, right? That this isn't affecting our collective aura, or, our collective, psyche.
Yeah, that's true. The shine of the world right now is very dim.
Yeah.
And that must play a huge part in it.
Yeah. It is the major part, if you ask me. In other words, if you want to talk about the pandemic and all that, it all ties back to how we treat the vulnerable, especially how we're treating animals. Oh boy! All right, let's pick it up.
Good
It
morning, as Raghunath says.
yeah, good morning. Okay, no, but thank you for sharing that, and let's go ahead and dive into the Bhagavatam. We'll chant our mantras. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one must offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I was born blind in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual masters treated my blindness with the mercy of their words of wisdom. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. All right. So, we read, Raghunath and I read a verse. We read a few verses yesterday, but we ended with Canto 3, Chapter 9, which is Lord Brahma's prayers for creative energy, and text number 9. And we discussed text number 9 at length yesterday. But, I'll read it now because there was an aspect that we didn't discuss from this that I thought would be interesting to revisit. So this is text 9. Lord Brahma is praying to Lord Vishnu, he's in his deep meditation, he's had this vision of Lord Vishnu in his heart, and now he's offering these prayers. And the texts, again, text 6 through 10, these prayers are describing the predicament of the souls, predicament of the jivas, predicament of all of us, how we get entangled and trapped and suffer in this world. So he says, "O my Lord, the material miseries which are without factual existence for the soul." I'm sorry. "O my Lord, the material miseries are without factual existence for the soul. Yet as long as the conditioned soul sees the body as meant for sense enjoyment, he cannot get out of the entanglement of material miseries, being influenced by your external energy." And I thought, this phrase here, he says that the material miseries that we're experiencing in life are without factual existence for the soul. What does that mean? How can that be true? Doesn't it seem like the stuff that we're going through is very real, and therefore it's affecting us? And let's just read the commentary here. It's a short one, and see where it goes. Prabhupada writes, "The whole trouble of the living entity in material existence is that they have an independent conception of life. They are always dependent on the rules of the Supreme Lord, both in conditioned and liberated states. But by the influence of the external energy, the conditioned soul thinks themselves independent of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead. Their constitutional position is to dovetail themselves with the desire of the Supreme Will. But as long as they do not do so, they are sure to drag on in the shackles of material bondage." Now he quotes a Bhagavad Gita verse. He says, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:55, "Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parta manogatan." They have to give up all sorts of plans manufactured by mental concoction. The living entity has to dovetail themselves with the Supreme Will. That will help them get out of the entanglement of material existence. And this verse, this section of the Gita is so... I read actually the next verse, 266, the other day with Raghunath, which was the definition of the Stita Dhira Muni. Stita Dhira Muni?
Yeah.
Sage of steady mind. And I'll read that verse now. It's one who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries. And in one sense, that's what we're talking about, right? Because this verse is saying that that the miseries that we're experiencing in life, in a sense, are unreal. Now, how is that true? But here it says that one can pass through these miseries with an even mind. So this is a clue right here. One who's not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Now, the verse that Prabhupada references just before that is 255, where Krishna says to Arjuna, "O Arjuna, when a person gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction." Okay, now we got to discuss what that means. All our desires for varieties of sense gratification, they arise from mental concoction. And when the mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then they're said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So, sometimes there's an analogy used when discussing this kind of topic. And that's the analogy of watching a film, right? You've heard that kind of thing before, Paramananda?
Yeah.
Right. You go into a movie theater? Yeah.
I have a great story about this very exact topic about
Okay.
life being a movie.
Okay, I want to hear that. Let's just flesh this out just for a second first. You go into movie theater, right? And really, what is a movie? But it's an illusion, right? It's like you go into a room and then they darken the lights. And why do they darken the lights? So that you kind of forget about the reality, right? It's like what's really happening in a movie theater is that there's a group of people sitting in an enclosed room in the dark, and they're watching images of light that are being projected through a moving piece of plastic film that's being projected onto a blank screen. That is the reality, right? That's the truth. But somehow all the people in the movie theater forget the truth, right? Like that's why you turn off the lights. So you forget like you're sitting in this row, in this space. And your mind buys into the illusion that what's happening on that screen is reality. And, and the more masterful the director and the cinematographer and the actors and the screenwriter are, the more you buy into the illusion. And you begin to identify with the characters as being real, and that the experiences that they're having, that those are real too. And so when the hero or the heroine that we've like really we've accepted into our heart, as someone that we like, when they go through something painful, we might cry, right? When there's some danger that is just around the corner that they might become subject to, we feel fear. Oh, no, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope they're going to be okay. I hope they're going to be okay. Someone do something, help them, and we experience
Because,
those.
in a sense, you identify with that hero of the movie.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why you're feeling those same feelings that he's feeling, or he or she is feeling.
That's right. But there's no hero there, right? There is no, there's just, light going through plastic, but the emotions that we feel, they feel very real. They feel very real. Now, people are different, right? Like if you can have two people sitting in that movie theater or watching a film together. Like take horror films, right? People like to see horror films. You ever watch horror films?
Ghastliness is a Ross.
It is. That's right.
Yeah, I do like horror films, actually.
All of these russes, all of these flavors, these emotional flavors, they're written about in these ancient texts, on Sanskrit drama. And they do break them all down. Just like occasionally on the show, we talk about like the 5 primary rasas, and especially, like in Vrindavan, you have like the rasa of friendship, right? The flavor, the taste of the love of friendship. And what are the ingredients and how does that play out? And you have like the flavor, say, of parental love. What is parental love made of and how does it play out in Krishna's pastimes? And then there's like the romantic love. and what is that made of, and it's all analyzed in these ancient Sanskrit drama texts. You know, have you ever seen those before?
Yeah.
Did you ever see my guru Tamal Krishna Goswami? He wrote a book, The Drama of Lord Jagannath.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Right. I wish I still, it's sometimes it's available like in softbound, but I wish I could find one of the hardbound copies of it, because the hardbound copy, it was a drama that he wrote that um, it was written according to the rules of Sanskrit drama. And the second half of the book, he explained how he did that. Right. Like, for instance, there are 4 different varieties of hero. So you choose one of those varieties and the different kind of qualities that they manifest. And then there's like, 4 different types of opening scenes, 4 different ways you can open it and so on. So it's like, it's just like in music or many different arts, you master kind of like the classical way of doing it, and even though it's restrictive in one sense, when you master it, you can do tremendous things with it. So Sanskrit drama was like that. And so
I
all
mean,
these Russes are there.
even George Lucas studied all this stuff
He studied
when
the
he did
Sanskrit
Star
stuff?
Wars. I don't know if he studied the Sanskrit stuff, but he studied the hero's journey and
Yeah.
how you go about you know um, making a drama where people can like fully identify with these different archetypes of heroes and things like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I mean, anyone, like, and you can walk into a Barnes and Noble and pick up books on how to write a film or something like that. And they actually have this thing, like we're saying, you identify with the character, like the protagonist, like the main character. And there's a thing where even, I mean, I'm telling you, it's really formulaic, and most films like will follow the formula. And they say that within the first like 1 minute or even like 30 seconds or something like that, the hero has to do something, even a small thing, that kind of gets you to like them. So like say a film opens up and it's got some music playing and it's showing like the main character and he's walking down the street, and then like, someone drops something and then he bends down and picks it up and hands it to the person. What that immediately does is it sends a signal to your mind or to your heart. Oh, this is a good person. I like them already.
Wow, it's all science to this.
There's a science to it. Yeah. And and what these great bhakti yogis did, like Rupa Goswami, was he took that framework of Sanskrit drama and then he took it to the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, and he analyzed it through that lens, so that we can really understand that what's happening in Krishna's Leela is that Krishna and Krishna's energies are working in such a way to really capture our emotions and help us identify with him, and take shelter of him. It's all, I find it all pretty fascinating.
I
But
remember
where was I going with all this?
I, I remember one time I went to a Sanskrit, I went to a drama in Vrindavan,
Yeah.
and sometimes they can just be like, in America you used to go to like a movie and there's explosions and it's really high action.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go to these like plays in Vrindavan, they're so slow
Yeah.
and they're just like slow moving, and I'm just sitting there like so bored, my American mind, and all around me are all these bridge bosses, and they're like crying, they're elated, they're watching these pastimes of Krishna, but
Yeah.
they see it in terms of those loving sentiments, and they're relating with it in that way.
That's right, because their minds haven't been conditioned by all these films and all of that, right?
Yeah.
So they can just get right into those emotions. Let me ask you a question. Those Navadvip Mandal Prikrimas that we went on to back in the early night, you were on some of those, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Most like greatest memories of my life, practically.
Yeah, it was these 9-day pilgrimage where you camp out every night all around like these holy places in West Bengal that are all related to Sri Chaitanya and his pastimes. And I remember each year they would have a drama, but one year it was mind blowing. And I actually saw this drama twice. It was a book written by a great soul and associate of Sri Chaitanya, Jagadananda Pandit. What was the book called again? Prema Vaivarta Vilas. Did you see that one? It was a one-man drama. I forget the devotee's name, but he was British.
think I did see it. That was on that really big one. Remember, it was like the first big one.
Okay.
There was a bunch
Yeah.
of, there was like a lot of devotees from Japan, and they brought those big hats.
Well, those are Chinese hats. Yeah.
Oh, Chinese hats. Yeah, those
Yeah.
devotees from China.
Yeah.
Was that
Yeah.
the one? I probably did see that. I think I
And
did see
so
it.
this what he did, it was so I loved it, and I would love to see if the script exists out there. It was a one-man drama where he plays the role of Jagannatha Pandit, who was a person that grew up with Sri Chaitanya, so was a childhood friend of his, and then he also became a renunciate and lived with Sri Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri. So he was there through like all these different paths, but he was also had a special rasa himself with Sri Chaitanya, right?
Yeah,
Which was like he was
he would
I
get
don't,
mad at him.
he would get mad at him. Yeah, he kind of had this fiery nature. So of course, like one famous Leela or pastime that takes place is where he just spends all his time like grinding. I don't know how you extract oil from sandalwood, but like, he spent all this time like creating the sandalwood oil, and he had a big clay pot of it. And with such devotion and thinking with love in his heart of Sri Chaitanya, he was preparing this to give it to him as a gift. And then he brought it to him. And he said, here's this, with complete love in his heart, I've made this for you, and I want you to accept this sandalwood oil. And what was Sri Chaitanya's response?
He said, I'm a renunciate. What am I going to
Yeah.
do with a bunch of fragrant
Yeah,
oil?
hey, I appreciate that thought, but I can't wear this. If I wear this, fragrant oil, people are going to look at me like, what kind of sannyasi is this? He's like some kind of sense enjoyer, He said, but take it to the temple and offer it to the deities there. And that way all your labor won't go to waste. And Jagannath Pandit, his love was so strong, but it would manifest like in this loving anger. And he just took that pot and just smashed it on the ground. And there's many pastimes with him like that. But in this drama, it struck me so strong when I saw this. I was probably, I don't know, 24 years old or something like that, watching this drama. Kind of new to, a few years into it. But I had this experience where you see, this Prema Vaivarta, it's a book that's like, it's a combination of his memories of his times with Sri Chaitanya, as well as like his kind of like advice that he's sharing with the reader about life and about how to practice bhakti. And so this script was so well written where it combined the telling, it's like he's speaking to the audience and sharing his memories of his time with Sri Chaitanya, and then also turning to the audience and just very sincerely begging them to practice bhakti and how to practice it, And but I remember sitting in that holy place and watching him create that character on the stage. Yeah, and it was so cool because it's outdoors and it's like under palm trees, and it was such a beautiful tropical setting. And I just remember feeling like this is just like, it's as good, or even this is Jagannatha Pandit manifesting through this person right here, right? His spirit, his teachings, his essence is manifesting in this person right now, and I'm feeling it just as if it were real. And that's why
Wow.
dramas and bhakti can be so powerful,
And music too.
Music too.
You feel the emotion of the person that's singing. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
You want to hear a great story about that, Rick Ruma?
Sure.
Do you remember that one kirtan? I think it was at Nishringapalli. Or remember the kirtan started and it was underneath a tree that had flowers in it. And
that wasn't in Nishringapalli. I do remember that though. That was I think it was the morning before going to Nishringapalli. That was at the home of, I think, Chandrasekhar Acharya or something like that.
That kirtan was wild.
Yeah.
And it was so cool because it was a huge kirtan, and it was actually like out of control. Like everybody was in such ecstasy, and they picked up your guru, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and they were like floating him in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I was all the way at the end of the kirtan. I don't know what came over me, what kind of transcendental madness, but I was like, I have to touch Tamal Krishna Maharaj's feet to my head.
This is my chance.
His feet were just sticking up in the air. So me being the professional stage diver / crowd surfer,
you had an advantage.
I like jumped up, I dove over everybody. I kind of crowd surfed over to his feet, and I put his feet to my head and then kind of fell back into the crowd.
I
it was awesome.
What I clearly remember about that kirtan was there was this big tree It's about
Yeah.
1,000 devotees, and just like all the kirtan leaders were just the best, and so like
Amazing.
it was, and everyone was just, no one was in Maya, right? It was like the atmosphere and the association, the whole thing. It was just like everybody was feeling it, and when those kirtans would go, they would just take off. And there was this big tree, and it was full of flowers. I don't know what kind of flowers it was, but they're beautiful, fragrant flowers.
Yeah.
And someone climbed up in that tree, and they started shaking the tree. And as this kirtan's going on, flowers are like falling from the sky. It
It
was
was
just,
straight out of the Mahabharata with the demigods raining
it
down
was
flowers.
crazy. It was so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that was the morning that one of the boats that was crossing the water, like we had to cross the Jalungi River,
Yeah. Nobody even cared.
and one of the boats sank. Yeah,
Yeah, I
and nobody
remember
cared.
that.
Everyone just swam to the other side, and was soaking wet for the rest of the day, but had a great time.
Do they still do that every year?
Well, it got so big, and then I think at a certain point, so many devotees were coming from Russia, right? Because that was before devotees were, maybe they're just starting to come, and then like thousands and that. So now I think it's broken up. Like there's an Indian one and there's a Russian one, in different translations.
Uh-huh.
But I haven't been on them, but I don't think any of them could touch those days, when all those special
It was
devotees are on it.
I went on it a bunch of times, but especially that year was so good.
Oh yeah. So any case, drama has that. So this is the point that I want to make, that if someone knows how to construct a drama well, or let's say a screenplay well, so, a screenwriter can write a really good script, and it can be acted very well and directed very well, then it moves the audience. But take a horror film. Some people can't watch horror films, right? It's just too much. I'm seeing some hands go up in the audience there. Right? Hands go up. People just can't sit through. Whereas other people will thrive on it, and feel like kind of they get off on that fear emotion, experiencing the ghastliness, right? And other people will sit there almost unaffected. Like some people, yeah, it's just a movie, right? One person is actually feeling complete horror and fear, like almost unbearable, like they have to leave the room. And another person, what are we talking about? It's just a movie, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm drawing, one point I think we can draw from this idea that's being shared in this verse, that the material miseries that we're going through are unreal, is if we can think of life like a movie. And quite frankly, there's so many texts that are telling us that, like, in one sense or another, this world is illusory, and we can talk more about that, right? But if two people are watching the movie, one person can be entirely emotionally caught up within it because they've let go of reality. Where the other person, one person, the lights went out, I forgot that it was in a movie theater. All my attention got focused on the screen, and I accepted what's going on the screen as being real. Now, what's going on the screen is real in one sense. There is light, there is a screen, there is a film, and different colors are projected on the screen. But when I think that this person is real and this event is real, well, now I'm in illusion. What Bhagavad Gita is saying is this world is like that. That it's just like the colors on the screen are moving and shifting in different ways. The material energy is shifting in different ways, and it's moving at every moment, And in one sense, we're the little soul in the dark, theater.
Movie theater of the heart.
Yeah, of the body, right? It's dark inside there, and we're through the eyes. We're looking at the screen of this world, and most of us are thinking that this is all real. Whereas some people, they're looking at it as if it's a movie, right? It's something that takes time to set in. It might take years to set in. It might take repeated contemplation on this idea, but gradually it wears away. And someone can be sitting, just like someone could be sitting in a movie theater and just like, but it's just a movie, right? One person's like fearful and even suffering almost, and the other person grabs them by the arm and say, "Hey, it's just a movie." Right?
Are you ready for my story?
I'm setting up your story because I want to hear your story. Yeah.
Because this is like exactly what you're talking about was exactly what I went through.
So let's hear it.
And so, everybody kind of knows this story from Raghunath. Raghunath's told it many times about our van accident.
Yeah.
But what I went through personally, when I read this verse, I immediately thought of this story about what I personally went through in that van accident.
Let's hear it.
Because when we got in that van accident,
You were in Colorado or something?
yeah, we were driving from Salt Lake City to Denver, and so we're driving through the Rocky Mountains.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night, it was 2:00 in the morning. Our driver fell asleep at the wheel. We launched off of a cliff in our van with a trailer, and we fell 150 feet down a cliff.
Yeah.
And we all lived. The van was smashed to pieces. Somehow or other, we all lived. And the van was packed with people. There was probably like 8 people in this tiny van.
Wow.
And so when the van crashed, I was in the back, and we had a loft in the back. And so Raghunath's head was facing forward. My head was facing backwards. And so the van crashed. And the first thing I did was I got up, and I could see Raghunath. And what had happened was there was a harmonium that was in the back of the van, and the harmonium came forward and smashed him right in the face, in the side of the face. He looked like that guy from, what was that superhero movie, Batman? Like one side of his face is perfect and the other side of his face completely messed up. Was that evil villain, the half of a face? One half of his face was completely black and blue. And I started shaking him. I was going, Raghunath, Raghunath, Raghunath. And he wasn't reacting at all. I literally thought he was dead.
Wow.
You know what's interesting? You know how like a person, you'd think that the 4-minute mile is impossible. And then one person runs the 4-minute mile. And then right after that, like 50 people run a 4-minute mile.
Right.
There's something in your mind that thinks, okay, now it's possible. And so now it can actually happen. And it kind of like opens up that possibility for you.
Right.
So when I thought Raghunath was dead, the possibility of my own self dying, it like opened up a whole new clear world that like Raghunath's dead, I could die. And
I could die any minute.
So I was really, really, really hurt. Like what had ended up happening was I messed up my shoulder really bad, and I broke 6 ribs like right next to my spine. So I actually thought that my back was broken.
Right.
And I didn't know it, but I was only wearing boxer shorts and a white t-shirt, and I had cut my thumb really bad. I basically cut my whole thumb open. So I had blood everywhere. I was wearing a white shirt, and I remember kind of like looking down, and just the whole front of my white shirt is just stained with blood.
Okay, we got a horror movie going on here for sure.
Yeah, it's a horror movie. This is the horror movie.
Right.
And so when I thought Raghunath was dying, and then our roadie was screaming like he was going to die, I thought I got to get some help. And so the van top was kind of like a little cracked, and I managed to crack it a little bit more, and I sort of pulled myself out of the van, and somehow or other I got to my feet. I don't even know how I got to my feet because I was so messed up. But I got to my feet, and I could see the cliff, and I looked at the top. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get to the top of this cliff? But I just started running for the cliff, and I took like maybe 3 or 4 steps, and I fell, and I managed to kind of fall, and I managed to kind of turn, and I landed on my back.
Oh.
And I was in such pain, and I didn't know that my hand was cut. I thought my head was cut. I thought my head was broken open, and all the blood was from my head. Because my head really hurt. Like I smashed my teeth. And
maybe you had a concussion or something.
I definitely had a concussion.
Yeah.
So here it is. Here's his van accident. I think Raghunath's dead. So it opens up a whole new realm of reality that I could possibly die. A roadie is literally in the van screaming, I'm going to die. Somebody please help me. I can't feel my leg. And he's actually calling out, Paramananda, please help me. Because I was the one that brought him on tour. He was like a hardcore kid that I knew from the Brooklyn Temple. And so I was sitting there, and, it's desert climate. So in the day, it's like, 90 degrees. At night, it's freezing. And I'm on the ground in just a t-shirt and boxer shorts. And my body is literally convulsing from being cold. And so here I am.
I'll tell you something. When they talk about how to write these dramas, this is what they tell you. Take the hero and you give them problems, and then you give them more problems and more and more. And that's what you just did, basically. You just gave a lineup of like all the different problems that you have that are intensifying the the experience.
If I could have written a movie of like a horror scene, like it was a horror scene in reality. And you know,
Yeah.
if you've ever like broken your ribs or hurt your back, it's so hard to breathe.
Mm.
So every breath that I'm taking is like labored. And I've been in a lot of pain. Like had my nose broken and my leg broken and stuff, but I never experienced pain like this in my life. Like it was such excruciating pain. And I was almost passing out, like literally like every 30 seconds.
Mm.
But I thought that if I pass out, I'm not going to wake up. Like I thought, I'm bleeding so badly, no one's going to find us. I'm going to bleed. I'm probably bleeding out of my head. I'm going to just bleed out here if I fall asleep. So my body's convulsing. I'm in incredible pain. I can't breathe. I'm bleeding.
Freezing cold.
It's freezing. And
Raghunath just died.
I'm thinking Raghunath's dead.
Right.
And I'm fighting passing out with every ounce of energy that I can muster in my life just to not pass out, because I think if I pass out, I'm going to not wake up. And I just start chanting and praying. It's like, there's nothing left. The only thing you have to take shelter of is Krishna. And I just started chanting out loud. I was like, and the people that were in the van, they could hear me because I was just chanting so loud. I was like, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And in my mind, I was just thinking, like, in the chaos, in the pain of thinking that your best friend is dead. I mean, that's a whole, trip.
Just that alone.
Yeah. Thinking that this kid who's crying out to me for help, he's going to die, and there's absolutely nothing I can do to help him. And I'm thinking, I'm going to die myself. It's like, I was taking so much shelter of Krishna. And as I was chanting, my only prayer was, Krishna, please help me. Krishna, please help me. Krishna, please help me. Like, in the most sincere way, I was taking shelter of Krishna, that like into a level that I've never done before. And, Krishna, when you sincerely pray to Krishna, Krishna hears and he reciprocates. And this is how Krishna reciprocated with me. Even before you explained this whole thing about the movie, somehow or other, when I was sitting there on that freezing cold ground, this realization dropped on me as if it was like Krishna just kind of like dropped it from the sky. Like all of a sudden I got this realization in my head that, Paramananda, this is all a movie. Like everything that's happening to you right now, it's just a movie. And like your body is in great pain. But actually the soul is 100% completely separate from the body. And I was even thinking of that verse in the Bhagavad Gita. The soul can't be cut to pieces. The soul can't be withered by the wind. You can't hurt the soul. Like my body was so broken, but I was just thinking, the soul, the person who I really am, is 100% completely untouched.
Right.
But because, like in a movie, I've identified with my body and I've identified with this kind of like 3D reality, and I've kind of bought into it, the illusion, just like you do when you're in a movie. You're
perfectly safe.
You're sitting in the chair.
Right.
But because there's even if it's a horror movie, you're in fear, and and the fear that you feel, it's real. I mean, it's not like it's fake. Like you're really feeling that, but it's illusion.
Right.
And so I had this thing that, and somehow Krishna reciprocated with me that you, not Paramananda in this world, like you, like the pure spirit soul, is going to be okay. You're actually okay. Just like that person that's sitting in the movie theater is perfectly okay. You're just watching a movie. And that was the exact realization that I had at that moment.
Amazing.
And I tell you, as I was sitting there, bleeding, in pain, fighting, passing out, thinking all my friends are dead, I took such great comfort in that. It was really like amazing, like somehow or other, this wave of comfort that I'm okay. Like I'm the spirit soul, I'm fine. And even like, I couldn't quite, even though I was thinking like, Krishna, I can't quite understand this. Like, I still feel like I'm in pain. I'm still identifying with the body, but somehow or other, I'm going to be okay. Like, this isn't actually happening to me.
You know what this reminds me of? Is well, of course we see so many like great yogis when they face death, which is one of those, that's one of those horror scenes that we face in life, right? It's like, oh my God, you know, death is right around the corner. It's coming for me. But we see so many yogis face death with such ease. And it reminds me of these verses from the Bhagavad Gita. From the 6th chapter describes it describes kind of more or less the Ashtanga yoga practice, but doing it focused on Vishnu, right? Like finding God within the heart, finding the Paramatma in the heart. And it describes, there's some verses like verses text 20 through 23. They're commonly translated together. And but they talk about this. This is, I'll start reading beginning from text 620 in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, in the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by the practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness realized through transcendental senses. Now listen to this part carefully. It says, established thus, one never departs from... This is one verse here. This is 622. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, they think there's no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. Okay, so there's this connection between not departing from the truth and never being shaken, even amidst the greatest difficulty. Like in the movie theater, there are two people. One person's watching the horror film and they're completely horrified and terrified. And the other person never departed from the truth, never bought into the illusion. So they're saying, it's just a movie. We're sitting in a movie theater. There's nothing to be afraid of. Why are you so shaken, right? Because they never departed from... One person departed from the truth, and they felt it all as if it were real. And another person never departed from the truth. And no matter what kind of greatest difficulty was going on that screen, they were unaffected by it. They were never shaken by it. And so you're describing like a full-on horror film right here of life.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't claim that I was in boundless transcendental happiness at that moment.
Right. Still working on that.
There was a sense that, at first I was very shaken by it.
Yeah.
And after getting that movie realization that somehow to this day, I think it was just gifted to me from Krishna, just because I was calling out so sincerely.
Yeah.
There was a sense that I wasn't shaken. And there was even a sense that if I die, everything's going to be okay.
Right. Right. Because I'm not this body. It's going to come. It may happen right now. I always, we're running out of time, but I share this story sometimes. A couple summers back, I was upstate and I was visiting a friend. And we were picking blueberries in their backyard. And another friend came over and she had brought her little dog. And the daughter of the people in the home that we were staying. This was Deborah and Marco over at their place,
Oh, cool.
And their little daughter was, I don't know, like 4 at the time or something like that. And when this little dog, was brought to her home, she just immediately fell in love with the dog. And right at that moment, as soon as she met the dog, her parents said, oh, well, at the end of the day, we're going to have, an issue to deal with here because when she takes the dog away, the girl's going to be heartbroken, right? And so anyway, that whole day, the girl just played with the dog the entire time. And just as they predicted, when it came time for it was Rachel who brought the dog over. When it came time for Rachel to leave and take the dog, the little girl just broke into complete, not just crying, but like crying as if the world were coming to an end, right? Crying in the same way, with the same intensity as someone cries when they lose their loved one. When a mother loses a child, that kind of intensity. In that little girl's world, just a horrible, like happiness is disappearing now forever, right? Because that dog, which was the very source of connection to my happiness, is now disappearing forever. And I'm bereft of that. And I will forever be bereft of that. It was that kind of like crying, you know, it was intense.
It's
It was
called
intense suffering.
it's called ugly crying.
Yeah.
You ever
Ugly. It
hear
was
that?
full on ugly crying. Yeah. And this is my point, is that the parents, the girl was in full on illusion, right? Like, my happiness is so connected to this and now it's gone forever and life will never be good again. Now the parents, they love the daughter, right? They want nothing but her well-being and happiness. And so they want to try to comfort her in some way. But at the same time, they couldn't help but just smile and laugh just a little bit, right? Even though the one that they love is suffering this, because they know the truth. They know that in a very short amount of time, this child will be restored and just running around and happy like they always were.
Mhm.
And it's just a moment that we're watching someone experience illusion so intensely that what's unreal has become real, and look how intensely they become affected by it. There's a humor in it.
If you're a parent, you have those moments a lot.
Yeah,
Your
okay.
kids are little, you snicker a little bit at them
Yeah, yeah.
when they're crying.
Right,
It's so
right. Yeah, you
ridiculous.
can't have it. It doesn't mean that you don't love them and feel for them and would take their pain if you could. But you just can't, and so perhaps, you know, the suffering that we experience in this world, you know, the wiser ones are looking at it and saying, and they can't help but laugh, that maybe we're all kind of like playing out in a comedy a little bit ourselves, in our illusion. And that and when we really see the world as it is, as being described in this text, that the miseries of this world, in one sense, they're unreal, right? It's a movie screen. It's moving constantly. We are that soul sitting in the movie theater of the body, totally safe, totally protected, you know. And when we get to that, and when we and this is life, you know, it's just like, again, it's like they say, little drops of water wear away the stone. We might say this, we might read this verse and say, it sounds great, but the fact is as soon as this show is over, I'm going to enter back into real life and I'm going to feel things the way I always felt them. But it's, you know, it's like drip by drip by drip. We hear these things, we reflect on them, we contemplate them, we pray, we get Krishna's mercy. Drip by drip by drip, you know, the stone starts to wear away, and we come to that stage where hopefully, as we get older in life, we become wiser. We begin to see it all. We begin to be that person in the movie theater that's like able to, the one that's stable and the one that's able to like take someone's arm and say, hey, it's just a movie. It's okay. You know, you're fine. You're safe. It's going to be all right.
You know, especially, at least maybe that stone can be worn away by the time that we die, because it's
that's the goal, at least, right?
I've actually had a couple of near-death experiences, and it's so intense.
Yeah.
It's going to be intense. Like, you know, the time of death is it's the real deal.
Well, that's a takeaway right there. Time of death is the real deal. Do we have any others, Mara?
Good morning, everybody.
Any other takeaways?
Life is a movie. Don't let it shake us.
There you go. I think that's the main one right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And dovetail yourself with the desire of the supreme will. Yeah, those two.
That's another good one too.
Yeah.
Paramananda, it's been great having you here, my man.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was fun.
We got another strategy now. You know, for all who's traveling, we can hook this up. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, anytime.